That is a scene from the new documentary, No Kidding, Me Too, which is the brainchild of my guest, Joey, who's been on the show many times before, and we appreciate his appearing once again. Jordan is also featured in the clip. I wanted to ask the two of you why it was so important to focus this message toward young people. Joe, why you told me, and I was surprised, I have to admit, 14 to 21 was your target audience. I would have thought it would have been midlife people as opposed to young men and women like Jordan. Why?
Because I personally believe in order to eradicate the stigma and shame, we have to begin really early in the, let's say, 6- and 7-year-old kids in the public school systems and create a mental health education program so that they know that it's just like the common cold, in that you feel something, you take it and you talk to your mom or your dad or your teacher or the nurse.
But how do you know it's just not regular adolescence angst?
The doctor will tell you.
The doctor will tell you. So it's okay to go to a doctor and say, I'm not feeling 100%.
My mom, who's an elementary school teacher, just has this great idea that, once a year, kids in schools have to go see a physical and go get a checkup for their physical state of being. And why not do that mentally? Why can't they have a mental checkup for these young adults, for these kids?
Yeah, include it.
Right.
That's a good idea. You're probably sitting there like I am sitting here wondering, well, how do I know if someone I love or perhaps myself is suffering from depression, and how do I clarify that from just having, a bad day? So we've brought in an expert to try to give us some answers to those questions. Dr. Mark Rothman is board certified. He's a psychiatrist who currently serves as Chief Medical Officer at Friends Hospital in Philadelphia. He has close to 30 years of experience in clinical, academic, and administrative psychiatry. Dr. Rothman, thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us.
It's my pleasure.
Is it as simple as black and white to say, oh, I'm having a bad day, or I'm clinically depressed, or is there a whole lot of gray area in between?
Well, the gamut of emotions we might all run in a given day certainly varies from day to day. We would look at the persistence of the disturbance that the individual is experiencing, and the depth of psychic pain that they are suffering, which you have to really get to know the person in order to understand that. And we'd also look at the person's total functioning. Depression is not just a disorder of mood and an outlook, it's also a physical disorder to a great degree. So the disturbances in depressive syndrome, clinical depression, that we would look for, in addition to the emotional or psychological sense of hopelessness, sense of pessimism, sense of sadness, we would also be looking for physical disturbances, disturbances in the bodily rhythms. Too much sleep, too little sleep, too much appetite, too little appetite, too little energy, too much energy.
So anything that seems a bit out of the ordinary and not just middle of the road, we should
especially for that individual,
put a light on?
Because for that individual
if
also.
It's different for that individual.
Right, and how much dysfunction it is causing in their lives and the lives of the people they care for, and in their own internal state of well-being.
Okay, let's start with the youngest generation, because as Joe's pointed out, he's really trying to get a message to them. Jordan just mentioned the idea of having some sort of mental evaluation with young people. Would you suggest that? Is that a good idea? Is that something parents should contemplate or consider if they're worried about their children?
Well, I think the best way to look for it is really knowing and paying attention to your child, to your student, etc. You have to know what's different for that individual, more so than a checklist. There are standardized checklists, but I don't think we're going to actually see that with tremendous regularity. We do have to educate people who interact with young people on a regular basis, pediatricians, teachers, etc., to look for the signs and symptoms of depression. So I think as part of the everyday interaction, that is more important than just sitting down. Now we're going to do the checkup.
Now, you heard these guys say earlier that there's a shame and a stigma that's associated with being declared mentally ill or having a disease of the brain. I can't imagine a generation being more impacted by that than young people, because they don't even want to tell their parents when they're being bullied at school because they're afraid that there will be repercussions from it. Can you imagine a young 14, 15, 16-year-old boy or girl saying, I have a disease of the brain, isn't that just going to kind of, exclude them from the group?
Well, I think the more it is, this is a very media responsive generation, and so I think the more things are put out there with this type of show, with the speaking that Jordan does, with Joey's documentary, right. To destigmatize it by showing it can happen to anybody. And I think just as some of the illnesses that you mentioned before, which were taboo or not socially polite to discuss, I think this will come out more and more.
Did you find that yourself, Jordan, that admitting first to yourself and then maybe to your friends that, hey, I do have an illness, or maybe you phrased it as a problem, however you decided to describe it, but were you very hesitant to let friends and family know?
Yeah, I didn't tell my friends about what was going on. I had 3 best friends in high school who knew I had depression my junior year because I went to a mental hospital when I had a breakdown. And that was the only time that my friends actually knew, that I was depressed, that I was having depressed feelings. And that was the first time I kind of admitted it to anyone other than my girlfriend and then my family. Even some of my family members I was embarrassed to tell. And I think it's something that is taboo nowadays, especially in schools. And I think one of the problems is when I go and speak, I ask young adults, when you hear mental health, what do you think of? Mm-hmm. And what I hear are the extreme cases. You hear celebrities that have to go to mental hospitals. Right. You hear about these school shootings, and I think that puts a lot of stigma and a shame to it.
Well, Joey and I talked about that when he was on the show last year, because I said, I never would have thought that you suffered from depression. I mean, I've followed your career for years. You always looked like you were enjoying yourself, living a high life. And you always managed to get to work mm-hmm. and do your job. And yet you were fighting that inner demon all those years.
Well, it's because movies demonize or romanticize mental disease, or even like The Day of Wine and Roses with alcoholism. People right. think that an alcoholic is somebody that is unable to function, and,
right.
and the norm is we're all functioning. Everybody's functioning. We have a bad day every once in a while. I didn't know that I was. My depression really set in when I stopped jogging. I was an avid jogger. My hip went out, and I couldn't run anymore. And I didn't know I was treating my depression with alcohol and jogging.
All right, give us some signs very quickly, because we're almost out of time, Dr. Rothman, of what people should look for if they suspect that either themselves or a loved one might be suffering from depression.
I think expressions of hopelessness, expressions of negativism, expressions of sadness, and the feeling, low self-esteem, of a profound nature, turning to stopping doing healthy things, as Joey mentioned, and turning to drugs or alcohol, self-medicating in that sense, would all be big red flags.
And they can get help, and that's the message that we want to deliver, that there is help available and that life can be good again.
Very highly treatable condition.
Right.
All right, and of course, that's what you try to get out in
right.
your film as well.
And go to nkm2.org. We are the hub. It's cool to be out there. I don't know another kid cooler than Jordan.
No, I don't know another kid cooler than Jordan either.
But, and Jordan is demanding that kids be as cool as him. I mean, it's cool to talk about, and that's what we want to make it. It's cool to talk about.
Jordan, thank you so much for speaking out about it and putting a face out there. Joey, thank you for bringing it to our attention. We certainly appreciate it. And Dr. Rothman, thank you to Friends Hospital for putting it out there for the community. And again, go to the website. If you want more information, you can go to lynndoyle.net, and we'll have that information for you as well. Congratulations to all, and thank you for watching.